Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another beautiful video on this beautiful channel, this beautiful day. Today we're talking about something called a vector. Now if you've gone linear algebra, you know a vector as a direction and a magnitude, right? But this isn't that type of vector. Now this is a container vector. Now we've been talking about arrays in the last few videos, and those arrays have a fixed size from the start. And then there's something called dynamic arrays, which we will talk about way later in the course. But this is already included in C++. It's something you can use from right now, which doesn't have a fixed size. So imagine if you have a database, you don't have an array of like 10,000. It's kind of unnecessary having all that. You might start with an array of 10 people, and as you add people, that array grows and grows. As well as it's saving the old data, it just increases its own size as it goes along, depending on how much it needs, right? And can decrease its size as well. Something dynamic. So that's a dynamic array. Now, vector is a class. You have to include vector. It's a standard C++, type, basically a class. So someone has created it for you in your convenience, and you can use it. Now, some schools don't like you using vector, not because it's bad container class, it's because they want you to learn to make your own vectors. That's what we're going to do in these tutorials, but later on. So making your own vectors isn't as hard as you might think. Dynamic arrays and stuff, once you get the hang of pointers and memory, you'll understand it very, very easily. But just to let you play around with it, let's start off by talking about vector. And there are different things as well. There's vector, there's a include list, and such and such. There are some things, they have different types of things, but vector is the one I like the most because it's very dynamic and it lets you do a lot of things. Now let's create a vector. Now vector is a template class as well. It's very, very far ahead in the course. We're going to talk about templates as well. But for you to understand that is you can create a vector for any type that you want. Your own classes, integers, strings, anything. So the way we work that is we use std vector. You want to use these arrow thingies. So this is in here, you type in the type that you want. So I want a vector that can only hold integers. Alright, now once you create that, you give it a name, myIntVec, and you just end it like that. So this is an empty container class right now. This doesn't have any integers in it. And we don't have to tell it how many we're going to have. You can if you want to. You can give it a start value like this. It should hold 20 from the start. Not the value 20, but 20 spaces. But we don't want that. We just want it to be 0. So if I do this, if I do a for loop here, so the cool thing about vectors is it keeps track of its own size. So you can write myIntVec dot, and then you'll get a lot of functions. We haven't talked about functions yet, but we will. But this is basically every vector has a bunch of these functions that you can call. So you can check it for emptiness. If it is empty, you can check its size, you can erase stuff from it, you can add stuff to it. So every vector that you create and you do a dot after it, you can see its class member function. So basically functionality that it has. So size is something we're going to call. Now this is called calling a function. We'll talk about functions in probably the next video or the ones coming, but just remember this. You can play around with it. So your vector, whatever your name is, dot size is what we're calling. And every function that you call, you don't leave it like that. If it's empty, you just want to use 2 empty parentheses. Don't think about it too much. Don't freak out. We'll talk about this soon. All right? Very soon. But for now, just memorize this. So you're calling myIntVec, this specific vector's size, so you're checking it. Now it's obviously 0 from the start, and I want to print out everything in myIntVec at position I, and then a space. So myIntVec.size, it's going to go through all of the things in myIntVec, and we're going to print it out. So if I run this, probably not going to get anything. It's just gonna cry or not say anything, not do anything. But if we add something to it, so the way you add something to a vector isn't like this, myIntVec at position 0 equals 20, not like that. All right, that's not how you do it, because it doesn't have a size from the beginning. It's 0. You want to push something into it. Now the way you do that is you say dot push, push back. Push back means push something to the back of the vector. All right, all the way back. So we're gonna push a integer back, because we told the computer before that we're only using this vector for integers, so it will only take integers. So I'll say 23. Sorry about the sound. We'll push back 23. Now if I run this, hopefully this will print out 23. It did. And I'll create a new line here as well. std cout new line, just like that. So if I run this, we'll see there is 23. Now what if I want to print out how big this vector is? Then I'll copy this size thing here, and I'll say maybe down at the bottom, std cout size of my int vec equals my int vec dot size, again with the empty parentheses, don't forget those, and then another new line. All right, and now I'm just gonna add some more things. So I hope you can see now the value of this type of a dynamic container. Basically a big box with which you can just fold out to make bigger when you need, and you can put more things in it. And when it's full, you can make more space. You can just fold it out even more. So that's basically how this works if you want to visualize it. So now I added some more things. 23, 2, 424, 565. So pushback means after the element that's been added. So after 23 was added and we called pushback, 2 was added after 23, 434 was added after 2, and 565 was added after 434. And size of my int vec is 4 because there are 4 elements in it. So that's very easy to remember. And that's the way you add stuff. Now, what if I want a vector out of strings? So std string my str vec. That's what I'll call it. My string vec. Did I include string? Remember to include string and vector when you're playing around with strings and vectors and everything. So my string vec. So the same thing here. I'll just copy paste this, and I'll copy paste the new line in between these so they don't kind of collide. And instead of my int vec now, I'm gonna use my str vec dot size, and my str vec at position I. So I'm gonna print out everything in my str vec and everything in my int vec. Now let me just copy one of these below here. Actually, I'll divide these up so that it's a little easier to see what's going on. So this is my string vec. We'll push back something in it instead. So push back maybe a name, maybe my own name, anything. So it will only receive strings. If I try to push something else in there, it will crash. So let me put in Bob as well. Maybe Bob wants to be in here. And then we're gonna print out size of my string vec as well. str vec, str vec. So remember, change these two here. Print everything out, print everything out. So yeah, let's just run this and let's see what happens. So all the numbers are correct. Serge and Bob, see how they were after each other like this? Strings and not numbers. Size of my string vec is 2 and my int vec is 4 because I have 2 things in strings and I have 4 things in the int vector. See how they're very dynamic like that? So there you go. That's basically it. That's basically vectors. So you push back stuff into them and they stay there basically. But what happens now, this is gonna crash if you do this, but I know it will. But if I put an integer into my string vec like this, like that, it won't even let me run. It will say something is wrong here. This thing will glow red. Something is wrong, please check it out. Oh, object type is std string and argument type is int. You see that? So it's not possible. So it will complain right there, even before you run it. So it won't even crash. It will just complain at the very start. Now, this is adding stuff. Now, how do we remove something? So after adding something, you can use my strvec.remove my, or erase, sorry, erase. Now this is a function as well, dot erase. Now it will ask you what you want to erase. All right, so the way I like to do this, you can write 0 here and it will erase the first element, or it won't actually, no, sorry, it won't. It takes something called an iterator, and it's very far ahead, but if you want to watch this video and learn about vectors and memorize this right now, and later on when you understand it better, you can use it better, but right now it's still important to see this, so don't freak out. But iterators are a different way of using these type of things, like going through stuff, something that iterates. It's something that goes from the beginning to the end. Now iterators are specially made for that, and they're a little harder to understand, but what you want to do is my strvec.begin, just like that. If you do that, this is an iterator. See, std vector, std string, iterator. And that means that begin is the first element in this vector. It will start there. And if you do +0, this is usually how I do. When I wanna remove something at position 2, you say my std vector.begin, empty parentheses +2. That will remove something at the position 2 from the beginning. All right, but this is dangerous because I don't have more than 0 and 1, so that's very, very dangerous. So 1 would remove Bob. If I run this, Bob should be gone when it's printed. Yep, Bob is gone. See? And there was one element. Let me run this again. Now my string vec is 1. See how I added Bob here and then I just removed him? If I do it at 2, I'll probably crash because we'll go out of bounds. See? Debug assertion failed. Vector erase iterator outside range. See, it's very clear what the error is. It's telling me that I'm trying to delete something that doesn't exist in this vector. But if I do +0, it should remove my name, Suraj. Yep, now it's only Bob. So this is how you remove things from my string vector or any vector that you create. That vector's name dot begin plus which position. So 0 is the first one up until the size. So what if you want to remove the last element without knowing the size of it? Because remember, these are dynamic. You don't always know how big they are if you have 1,000 things. What you can do is also a little more complicated. If you just want to erase the last thing, you can still use, or actually you can use the end. Actually you can use this, my string vector dot end, and it should remove the last one. I think this didn't work for me once. Yeah, end -1. That should remove the last element. Exactly. End -1, because end goes to 1 past the last element. So remember, if we have 3 things, it's 0, 1, 2. The end would be the size of it, so 3. All right. So that's not that good. So there are different ones. There is let me see, end rear end. Let me see if that works. Let me just test this out. If that doesn't work, I'll get back to you. No, that doesn't work. Okay, so what is cend? Because I don't remember all of these. Let me just see if cend works. No, it's still out of range. Okay, so that's a way you can do it. Another way would be a little more complicated. Begin plus mystrvec.size, because we'll go to the last element +1, and then you say -1, which will also give you the last element probably. Yep, Bob is gone. So this is a little harder to understand. You can use end -1 to remove that element. So one last thing I want to show you is we'll keep this, and I'll actually just make a comment of how you want to end -1 for the end, just so you remember if you ever check the code again. And then I want to show you how to erase a whole vector, like every element in it. Now you could do this. It's very simple. My int vec dot clear. So this would remove everything from this my int vec. So if I run this, my int vec dot size will be 0, and nothing will be printed out. See that? So I just cleared it completely. Everything. Another way to do it is something you might find useful later if you make bullets in games where a certain bullet hits something, that bullet should be gone. That bullet should be removed. So I'll just show you this example really quickly. Remember, don't freak out. You'll learn about this more in detail later. This is just so you understand kind of how to use vectors right now. So my int vec.size, because we want to go through everything, and I want to remove, let me just do a comment. My int vec.clear removes everything, and this is also going to be commented out later, but this is to remove everything one after another. So it will go through the whole int vector, and I'll do my int vec.erase my int vec.begin plus I. So I want you to see what's happening here. It will erase something at this position within these parentheses. So it will start at the begin plus I is 0 at the beginning, so it will erase the first element. Then next it will erase the element 1, my begin plus 1, begin plus 2, all the way up to size minus 1, because I will always be less than the biggest size, so it will always be minus 1 of the size. I hope you can see that. So this will erase every little element in, or it should remove every little element in, let me just see, my int vec.size. Did I clear it? Okay. Let me just think. Hey, I just figured out what I was trying to do, and I was trying to show you actually how you erase something at a certain spot once you find it as being, like if you're trying to look through a database and remove a certain element at that position in a vector, then you do this. Now it's a little complicated. I know, I don't know what I was trying to do before. If you want to clear the whole vector, use myIntVec.clear. But if you want to remove, for example, if you want to look through the whole vector and find one element and remove it, if it's the correct element, like I want to remove 2 in this thing, but I don't know where 2 is, so I'll go through the whole thing, find 2, and remove it. Alright, so that's basically what this is for. So this is remove certain element at an unknown position if it exists. So this is kind of find it and remove it for a vector. It's very complicated. It looks very complicated. Let me explain everything. Let me redo this and let me explain everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a for loop, which we had before. I'll go through the whole vector. I'll go through everything, because remember, we don't know if it exists or not and what the position is. But what we're saying is if we find it, remove it from that position. I don't want it to exist anymore. Like removing a person from a database, or a number from a certain array, or an item from your inventory, whatever. So let me just show you what I want to do. So I'll go through the whole thing. I'm going to make an if statement. If my int vec equals, let's make an integer up here. Int integer to remove equals, I want to remove 2. Okay, so I'll remove 2. So if my int vec at position I, remember we're going the whole thing, if this thing at the position I equals integer to remove, so if it would be 2 at this position, we're going to erase it. If it is not, we'll go to the next iteration and check it again until we're at the end. And if we haven't found anything when we're at the end, obviously it doesn't exist. But as soon as we find it, we will remove it. So this might come in a school assignment or something like that. It's really good to know how to do for a vector. And then you want a boolean. You want it to be bool found equals false. So you haven't found the element to start with, right? You don't know if it exists. So we'll iterate until we're at the end, and found equals false. So while we haven't found it and we're not at the end, we'll keep going. All right? But as soon as we find it, this is the if statement. If the item there is equals to integer to remove, we'll erase it. And then we'll say found equals true. And if you don't do this, you'll get errors like we got earlier when I was showing you why we got a 2 and everything. Maybe I'll cut that away in the video, but still, I got errors because size was changing as I was removing stuff, and we couldn't really remove everything from the element or from the vector. So this is only to remove one element. as soon as you found it. So as soon as we find 2, we'll erase it. And otherwise, if we're at the end, we'll say if still found, or if found equals false, still after the whole for loop, after checking everything, then we still haven't found it, right? It's still false. So then we'll say std cout integer to remove was not found in my int array, like that, and then we'll create a new line like that. So otherwise we'll say std cout integer to remove has been erased, like that. So if we run this now, and remember integer to remove is 2, and I think I added a 2 in here. Yep, 2 has been erased, and now see the 2 is gone. What if I want to remove 434? Then I'll say okay, find 434 in the array and remove it. 434 has been erased. See, it's no longer in there. So that's why we can use this. This is why we're using all this. And if we use 43, which doesn't exist, we'll say was not found in my array. 43 was not found in my int array. So this is a good way for school assignments to find something in an array and remove it if you're using vectors. So thank you for watching. Take care. Thanks for sticking with me. This is a long video. But yeah, I found the error. We're good. Take care. Keep learning. Best of luck. I'll see you guys in the next one. All right? Bye-bye.